This is Cinema Beats production.
We've been talking about triangles for a lot of time in the last couple of weeks, and now we're going to take a look at some trigonometric relationships based on right triangles. We are going to be talking about the sine, the cosine, and the tangent of angles, and we're going to relate these to you. Now we're going to first take a look at angle x, and this is going to be our reference angle. We're going to identify each of the three sides. Now it's easy to identify the hypotenuse. Remember, the hypotenuse is directly across from the right angle. Because we're using angle x as our reference angle, the opposite side is across from it, and this side is referred to as the adjacent side. In math and in English, adjacent is next to. So we have the adjacent side, the opposite side, and the hypotenuse. And trigonometry is all based on the relationships of these sides in dealing with the angle side. So let's take a look at the sine. How do we determine the sine of angle x? Let's put the x in here. To do that, we take the opposite side and we divide it by the length of the hypotenuse. That will determine the sine of angle x. To determine the cosine, and again, these are just ratios, as you can see, we're putting the numbers together, set up as a ratio. For the cosine of x, we have the adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse. The tangent, another relationship between the sides, is the opposite side divided by the adjacent. How do you remember all this? You remember it with SOHCAHTOA. No, that's not an Indian name. It's not that word that was found at the lost colony of Roanoke. SOHCAHTOA, sine, opposite divided by hypotenuse. Cosine, adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse. TOA, tangent, opposite side divided by the adjacent side. Now, how does this work? Well, let's substitute in some numbers and we're going to use them over here. Let's take this, let's call it a 35-degree angle, just for the time being. We're going to determine that the hypotenuse, the hypotenuse, we're going to say is 10. Okay? Now, what we want to do is find out the length of one of these. And let's take a look and see, what do I want to find? I'm going to have to find the length of the opposite side. So which of these am I going to use? I'm going to pick one of these three ratios to use to determine that. So where do I have hypotenuse and opposite that I'm looking for? And let me label this with an X so I know that's what I'm looking for. I'm going to use this top one. I'm going to use the sine of the angle. So I set up the relationship. So I have the sine of 35 degrees. Well, let me tell you what, before I do that, let me just write it out so we can see it. The sine of x is equal to the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. So we have the sine of 35 degrees is equal to the opposite, which in this case is x, divided by 10. Now we apply our algebra. Multiply both sides of the equation by 10. So we have 10 times the sine of 35 degrees is equal to x. Now, I don't know these signs right offhand, but I do have on my phone a scientific calculator. So I'm going to find out what the sine is. I go to a function which will tell me the sine, and I type in the number I need, which is 35, and finish that, get my equal sign, and the sine of 35 is 0.5735. And that's equal to x. I multiply these, so I end up with the length of the opposite side. That is 5.735. And that's how we apply these. Now, I'm not going to walk you through each of these. You get to identify in any of your problems what ratio you're going to use. Make sure you use those scientific calculators to find out sines of angles, cosines of angles, and tangents of angles. Yeah, let me put my X where it belongs. I forgot that one. And if you have questions about using your calculator or about these in general, talk to one of your tutors. They're there and they're available. And now you can get to work. You can get to work.